Okay.
Brother Graham wants to work in the NBA doing analytics, and so in this video, I'll walk him and you through the process of creating a sports analytics project specifically for the NBA that'll hopefully get him and you hired. So,
Interestingly enough, I actually have expertise here.
I know a couple months ago you had said that the Utah Jazz had opened up a data internship, right? The good news is I found another one. Graham and I spent the next half hour diving really deep inside of this job description for this job opening for this NBA data position, and we came up with the decision that we really needed to show that we had ETL API skills, basically getting data from the NBA to our local machine. We need to demonstrate that. We also need to demonstrate some SQL or Python data analysis capabilities. And lastly, we need to demonstrate that we were able to create some sort of a front end where a coach or a player could actually be using the application.
So 2 things here. One, that Utah Jazz internship, that's every year, and they might be once every year or twice every year. So the NBA is weird. Sort of after the season ends, like in the summer sometime, and then it goes up into December. And then there's another internship, usually half, that starts around January, and then it goes all the way into the season ends with some overlap, right? And that's like the most minimum time for an internship I've seen for basketball teams. I know Oklahoma does it that way. I don't know if they still do it. I think Orlando also did it that way. But on the Jazz, shout out to our dude Corey, friend of the stream, when he was the manager of the analytics team there. Their team was pretty lean, so I would only assume that they would do like one full year internship, or rather a full year internship, probably for like 2 or 3 interns. So that happens all the time. So Avery's brother, if you are interested in an internship with the Jazz, they definitely have those, and there's at least 1, if not 2, application windows. With that said, the stuff that Avery just mentioned, which is like pull data, do some sort of analytics on top of it, put a front end on the front of it, that seems a little much for an internship. He didn't say that this was specifically an internship. This might be a full-time job for an analyst position. But that is the job. A lot of the job is pull data from SQL, do some sort of analytics over it, whether it's like, simple statistics and evaluating some sort of performance historically, or making some sort of model that helps predict something in the future. Regardless of what you're doing, putting some sort of reporting function over it. So a web app, something that's printable, something that's executable, something that's discoverable or findable across all of your other data tools or tech tools at your team. So this is all pretty typical. I would say that maybe there's some liberal words used here for specifically this YouTube video, since Avery didn't mention what team or specifically the job title or really anything. So this could be anything from like an analyst entry-level position to like some sort of open rank data position on who knows what team this is, right? But let's go. Let's keep going.
It was also very evident that they wanted the topic to be something on game preparation, game evaluation, or player development. And we decided to focus on the game evaluation because we thought it would be the easiest and also kind of the most interesting. We then tried to think through what would be useful for the Jazz in terms of game evaluation, what would be something that they'd be interested in and that could potentially be useful to them. And we ended up landing...
Was that his brother? Who was that? Like when that came up, it was like, oh, something useful for the Jazz, and then this random guy comes
kind of the
up,
most interesting.
Right?
We then tried to think through what would be useful for the Jazz in terms of...
useful for the Jazz. Picture of this guy.
of game evaluation. What would be something that they'd be...
When I think of the Utah Jazz, I don't think of Donovan Mitchell. I don't think of Rudy Gobert. I think of this dude. I think, you know what? Boom. Avery's brother.
Interested in, and that could potentially be useful to them. And we ended up landing on thinking about lineups. We ended up deciding we wanted to create some sort of web app that lets you test and play with different lineups.
I don't think of Donovan Mitchell or Rudy Gobert for the Jazz because they traded their asses. That's right. That's right. That did happen. That did happen.
And see how that might affect the stats of the team. We probably spent the next hour exploring different data sets, trying things like Kaggle, looking at different APIs, but we ended up settling on the NBA API. After we spent some time trying to understand it, we were able to get it to work finally and give us data. Using the NBA API, we were able to basically bring in all of the team lineups from the 2021-2022 season.
The NBA API is total ass. One of the worst things that the NBA did, and this is me being able to talk about this as a not basketball guy, but one of the worst things that the NBA did was when they recreated their NBA.com/stats page. They also made it so like none of the previous web scrapers could actually work on their pages anymore. And so the NBA API is like really, really bad simply because the place where they source the data doesn't really allow you to scrape it anymore. It's all like buried inside HTML5 nonsense. So it's pretty difficult. It's pretty difficult. And I do blame like the NBA, the data people at the NBA for taking away the functionality of their website for people who were doing analytics and not replacing it with something that had equal or more value in terms of like being able to get league level data, whether it's play-by-play or lineup specific or box scores only, or just being able to scrape their tables. Like, it's pretty cumbersome now to use the NBA.com/stats page. Someone made a package for NBA, but the dude who made it was totally demented. Jesus. One of the worst things the NBA did was not pick up Jason Baseball. Would recommend Hoop R over that other package. Way to go, NBA. It's always Scrabble, just a real pain in the ass sometimes. Not sometimes. Like, every time. And it's the big issue is the front-end developers for the NBA.com/stats page can always make updates and totally fuck your scraping, right? So if you are creating something that's supposed to be updated per game or per week, like you can't really trust the NBA site to allow you you can't really trust that site as a source of data, right? You need something else. So a lot of the time, dude, that's what it is. Like you throw in like some random new div or some random new like column name and you're like, you could be completely fucked, right? So a lot of people that I know typically are just using some form of like basketball ref, right? And they just scrape that somehow. But even then, like Sports Reference, they're paywalling a lot of that access. Yeah, ESPN is also not bad, but yeah, who knows when they'll paywall their shit, right? Like Basketball Ref is like Sports Ref is paywalling a lot of their access. ESPN, they could flip a switch. I'm used to monthly updates at most. You can context match sometimes, but you can get bad context matches. Yeah, so that wouldn't work for like daily fantasy people. That wouldn't work for people who are trying to create, say, an app that they're trying to show to like teams that does some sort of like lineup optimization for your next upcoming games. That wouldn't work for anything that does player tracking, say at a game to game or week to week basis, right? So monthly drops, that would be tough. Boo paywalls. I know, boo paywalls. ESPN changed up their API over the summer for a lot of their football stuff, broke a lot of stuff. Yeah, that's what happens. between sports betting and fantasy stuff, is it encouraging folks to paywall? No. Well, yes, it is encouraging people to paywall because if they're making money off of it, then they want to be a part of the money making machine, right? But the people who are getting hurt are the people who are trying to get into the field in general, right? So you probably do have a lot of people pinging sites because they're working for people who are working on gambling problems. But for people who are trying to like develop the experience or learn about it or academically understand a problem, like you're limiting that access. You're limiting the advancement of new metrics, of new research, of updating models with new model types, of all of these kinds of things, the more you limit your data sources. So I'm going to say it, Sports Reference, ESPN, AB, that's not going to help you make money on sports betting. It can't by itself. It's used because it's easier to obtain than others, but you can't beat the betting market with the data available there, right? Like, truly, if you have, say, play-by-play data, the next layer that you need on top of play-by-play data is some, like, per possession data. Because basketball is like you have so many possessions, you have so many shots per game that the most simple play-by-play models, shot-by-shot models, they're getting destroyed by Vegas already. Like your Vegas odds are always going to be better. And luckily for sports analytics, because you have Vegas odds on every single game, that does provide a very good baseline of how good your model is. Because if you could beat Vegas, then you probably have a pretty good model, right? And we already seen that too, right? Like when we talk about how often do people make good models that can beat Vegas? Like, so here's the market. This would be the market of the about 1,000 people who played this. You had about 20 people beat the market. All right. So in general, your odds are not good. Your odds, the market, Vegas is very good, right? About what they do. And for these people, which, you know, some of these names are pretty important in our NFL modeling community, like Ben Baldwin's up here, you see Seth Walder here, you see Ben Robinson over here. A lot of people here are either doing stuff in the public or have worked on teams or have worked inside of sports analytics organizations before. So like the fact that they're able to beat the market at all with publicly available data is pretty hardcore, because the market themselves, you have firms, you have Vegas with access to probably denser and more rich data than the public does. No disrespect to the people who are above the market on this leaderboard, but even they would admit they had some degree of luck in beating the market here. Yeah, because again, they have access to only the public available data, whereas actual Vegas odds from good Vegas bettors, they're going to be working with data that's not available to anyone else, right? Data that's available to teams and to the league, but not available to like the general public, right? And we're talking about like any data that helps move the model. So Seth has the dots though. That's true. He does have nice dots. He does have dots. What other data would they have? Player tracking data. That's not available publicly. So yes, very difficult to beat Vegas.
So here's the function that does that. Basically, it just gives you a bunch of data about the lineups, including the minutes they played, their plus minus score, other stuff like that. And of course, who those.
But that was all. That's all to say the same thing, which is the access to data is really important. And even in like the most public arenas, like baseball or the NFL at this point, it's still very minimal in terms of like the data that is provided publicly versus the data that I'm able to gain access to, right? So
those 5 players are in that particular lineup. We created a function that would get it for the 2021-2022 regular season. And then we basically looped through all the different teams, or I guess really all the team IDs, which we got here, and created a giant CSV called NBA Lineup 2021 that basically had every possible lineup for every single team during the 2021-2022 season. That CSV ended up being 7,500 rows. So that is the total number of combinations of NBA players that happened in this last season. We saved that data as a CSV, and we knew we needed to create some sort of a front end that would allow coaches and players to mess around with this data and create some cool visualizations and filters so that
players are not messing around with this.
They could do their own analysis. When it comes
players
to
are not touching this
applications very quickly, and with my limited programming knowledge, I really enjoy Streamlit. I think Streamlit is one of the easiest ways to deploy some sort of web tool that would allow other people to access it.
Oh shit! Streamlit was a sponsor on this channel once. Fuck.
Immediately. Here's what we created. We call it the NBA lineup analysis tool. So first, you choose your team. It has all 30 teams right here. We're big Utah Jazz fans, so we're going to select the Utah Jazz. Then it automatically populates a starting 5. It's not necessarily the starting 5, it's a starting 5, and shows you what the minutes, the plus minus, the field goal percentage, and the field goal percentage from 3-point land as well. And then it breaks all that down by these histograms down below. So the blue represents all of the different lineups, and the red vertical line is this particular lineup. So this particular lineup was the outlier by far. It's our starting lineup, and you can see that we played over 600 minutes with these guys. The plus minus for these was huge. It was actually 93, which seems to be almost the largest that the Jazz had. And the field goal percentage was around that 0.5, as well as the 3-point percentage maybe was about the average, around 0.39. Now let's say someone got hurt. So for example, maybe Rudy Gobert could not play that night, or we're going to make a substitution. We could sub out Rudy and put in someone like Whiteside, Hassan Whiteside, and hit enter. And we can see, wow, the plus minus drops to 27. You know, the minutes is 74, so on and so forth. Basically,
why is everything a beginner level project? It's because that's what makes numbers, dude. That's what makes the numbers. Like, if you want, like, the real shit, that's why this channel exists, you know? But if you don't want the real shit, that's why, like, these YouTube tutorials exist.
This is a hands-on tool for coaches and players to see how different combinations of players affect the game. All right, Graham. So if I were to continue this, if I was you, and we're going to continue this and make it better, which I definitely think we can.
Bro, I love the, like, let's just capture my screen in a Google Meet with my brother and just hopefully not fuck up my windowing here. What a dude. This is some editing, bro. This is my dude, Avery. This is some editing.
Can make better. Here's a couple things that I would do. So first off, I'd go to GitHub, and you're already a collaborator here, but the people watching this video will not be. So they'll go to code and they'll basically fork it one way or another, whether that's, you know, via the zip or GitHub desktop. That way they have access to their own code. And some things.
I want to create mid content for middle level devs. Dude, I already create mid content for everyone.
That you or someone else could add. The first thing that I think needs to be addressed, it'll throw an error, right? So I think what we want to do is basically put an if statement. So we're only going to show this stuff if the number of players is equal to 5. The next thing I'd probably add is I'd add a secondary horizontal line that is maybe dashed in black that would show the mean. So to do that, you would basically just add these extra V lines, but instead of in DF important min, it would be df team min dot mean, basically. Another thing is that we only really looked at like the select your player. It would be cool to, like, for instance, this would be more work to either add a whole new section on like just exploring the team data in general, right? Because like there's no way for us to look at the data for just the team as a whole. It has to be 5 players. You have no choice, right? It'd be fun to have either like another page or somewhere on this page where you could add someone else that would be able to that would explore the whole team as a whole. But maybe the most important thing would be a call to action to people who are looking here. So you could have potential readers that want to add to this or change it, and so you could say, you could fork the repo at this link. But more specifically, recruiters, the Jazz, you want to say, reach out to me, contact me at this email or this link. So if you want to make any of these changes, I will give you the code and all the data for absolutely free. Just go ahead and click the link down below in the description that says resources, sign up, and you'll be able to have the resources at your pleasure. By the way, my name is Avery Smith. I'm doing 30 data science projects in 30 days. If you enjoyed this video, I think you'll enjoy this video as well. Please check it out. Bye.
Nice. Truly amazing stuff, bro. I'll say at least for like this particular video, like the good thing about it is it's end to end, from grabbing the data to creating the front end, and it has some analytics related stuff to it. In this case, empirically describing lineups, right? But there are a few things where like I wish it had, and it probably would take more data science than any one person would be willing to commit, right? But the first one would be like, give me lineup optimization on the team, right? Like that would be best, but that would require simulation. So this doesn't do that. This is just looking backwards. It has no simulation aspect to it, which is fine. It doesn't need to, but in my okay. And then we create the Kubernetes cluster to deploy them. Yeah, no, that's so we don't want to like take what is a beginner project and turn it into literally an expert level project at that point, right? Because someone who might be coming in as an entry level or an intern might not have like simulation under their belt, right? Or if they do, it might not be as refined as some data science team simulation methods. So that's one side of it, is like a more impressive version of this would be like optimization of lineup, not necessarily describing lineups that have happened and whether or not they were good. The second thing, which is really important to me personally, and probably to people who would be looking at this from the point of view of like usability, even though like this would never be the app that anyone would use for lineup creation. Maybe you would use it like post-game reporting, but they probably already have something that does that, right? The important thing would be not just to compare to like your team's ability, your team's distributions, but to the league, right? And because like, all right, if you have the best lineup on your team, great. But if you have the best lineup on your team and your team's like actual dog, then why does that matter, right? So you want to know, where does a particular lineup or where does a particular part of your team match up against the rest of the league, right? You just want, if every single lineup you put out there is better than league average, then you have a really good team. And that is lineup optimization to some extent, if we're using historical data only. So using historical data only, using empirical information only, without any projection, without any simulation, I would be more interested in what is the league average and are you above it? So that would be like my two big things here is like, this does take it from beginning to end. Avery's not showing you the full thing that he could probably do with it. He's doing this for like his YouTube channel, right? But if you did take this out to a logical conclusion, that would be really good for a team. Like a portfolio addition would be, here's our team that I'm looking at, and here's how the lineups compare to all the other lineups in the league, not just the ones on this specific team. A couple of the other things that are just interesting in this particular notebook is clearly the use of like a random mix of Python, going from some pretty simple Lambda functions here, but also like for these Lambda functions, when you're just trying to quote unquote find the right lineup, hold on, let me move my face. Where's my face? Like here, when you have like an apply on a Lambda inside of this particular series, and you're looking for the right lineup, you could probably do this in a easier way with just some conditionals. You don't need like this, right? This also, an apply inside of pandas is essentially a loop where you could probably get this in a vectorized operation. Then I see like just other stuff like, why do we care about resetting the index here at all? And again, in terms of pandas, we're talking about optimization using indices, optimization using your vectorized, using vectorization inside of pandas, right? When you start getting rid of things like the index that the dataset came from, you lose a little of that ability to vectorize simply, right? And we saw that the other night when I was coding, like you can do joins and they're extremely fast, and you don't need to use a join or a merge statement if you just keep the index, right? If you just maintain your index, you can just you can just set things equal to each other, and it implicitly does joins at like lightning speeds. So that is the benefit of pandas. But in this, like if Avery's just pumping this out real quick, and this is just the most comfortable he is in coding, then I can't fault a guy for that. Like I rewrite my same train test split every fucking night, and there's absolutely like 10 different ways to rewrite it in several fewer lines, yet I still do it my way. So I don't know. Overall, I think this is like really good in terms of just, if you're adding something to your portfolio, this is a nice like portfolio adder. I don't think anyone who would be reviewing an applicant, if they saw this, I don't think anyone would be like, oh, this is bad, right? I think everyone who would see something like this would say this has some pretty good technical skill to it, and you would most likely be asked about this project through your interview by the technical team, right? They would ask you like, what would you do differently? What are the things that you wish you had time for? Did you have ideas about data science? Did you have ideas about front end? Are you more of a front end person, or are you more of an analytics person? Are you more of a back end person, or are you more of a front end person? You'd get all those questions if you had a project like this in your portfolio. So just also know that, like, just because you could take a tutorial and shape it for yourself, if you're not able to talk about it at an expertise level, which you would typically get if you built it yourself, I I would strongly recommend not putting that in your portfolio. But if you are able to build something like this from beginning to end, it is a really good step, especially towards like a internship or entry level role. So that's an interesting one. That's pretty good.